What happens when the man she left doesn't fall apart, but becomes untouchable in silence? She thought your silence meant surrender, that you were broken, defeated, still holding on. What she never imagined was that your silence wasn't a cry for help. It was the sound of a man rebuilding, quietly, ruthlessly, day by day. You didn't call, you didn't chase, you let the silence stretch. And in that silence, you found yourself. Because when the noise of heartbreak fades, what's left is raw truth. And the truth is, she expected to be your weakness. She thought she was the center of your identity, that without her you'd fall into nothingness. But what she failed to see is that you were never hers to complete. You were only ever unfinished. She moved on fast, or so it seemed. Maybe she flaunted it, maybe she stayed silent. But deep down she believed you were still orbiting her world, checking her posts, stalking in the shadows, waiting for a green light to reach out. That's the narrative her ego needed, until the notifications stopped, until the energy shifted, until she felt the space where your attention used to live and realized it was gone. She expected echoes. What she got was stillness, the kind of stillness that speaks louder than begging ever could. She didn't expect you to become colder, wiser, better. She didn't think you'd start dressing sharper, moving differently, laughing again, with women she doesn't know, doing things she was never invited to. And even if she says nothing, trust me, she notices. Because healing in silence isn't just recovery, it's rebirth. And nothing is more terrifying to someone who expected you to stay broken than watching you rise like you never needed them in the first place. If you're done bleeding in front of people who left you for dead, hit that like button. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. My silence is my strength. Now, let's begin. Number 1. The shock of your silence. She expected drama. She expected a reaction, a long text, a midnight call, maybe a scene. But you gave her nothing, just silence. And that silence hit harder than any words ever could. Because in her mind, she was still the center of your world, still the flame you couldn't stop chasing. But when the calls didn't come, when the messages stayed unsent, when the attention she was used to simply vanished, suddenly your silence screamed louder than any outburst ever would. She waited for the breakdown, that classic collapse, the unraveling of a man who just lost the woman he thought he needed. But what she didn't expect was poise. What she didn't expect was discipline. A cold, unbothered quiet that told her everything she didn't want to hear. That you were done playing the part of the broken one. That you were no longer available to be emotionally blackmailed by memories. She mistook your stillness for hesitation. But what it really was closure without permission. You see, when a man goes silent, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, it unsettles people. Because that silence is a boundary. It says, I don't owe you a performance. It says, I've accepted what is, and I've let go. And that kind of detachment, that grounded, unshakable stillness, it terrifies the one who expected to be missed forever. Because silence is not the absence of power, it is the evolution of it. You didn't chase, you didn't beg, you didn't explain your worth. And in doing so, you took away the very thing she depended on most: control. She was prepared to reject your love, but she was not prepared to be ignored. She assumed you'd orbit, that you'd keep feeding her ego from a distance, that you'd check her stories, leave a like, slip into her DMs when the silence got too heavy. But it never did. Not for you. Because you were using that silence to sharpen your soul. Now she's the one haunted by the absence she created. And that's the true twist. When you stop performing pain, you start becoming the man she never believed you could be without her. Number 2, she thought you'd wait forever. She thought you'd pause your life, that you'd put everything on hold just in case she changed her mind. In her mind, you were frozen in time, waiting faithfully at the emotional doorstep she slammed shut. That's the illusion many people cling to when they walk away, the idea that you'll still be there when they come back, that the door they closed remains unlocked, that the love they discarded will sit quietly until it's convenient again. But that version of you no longer exists. What she didn't realize was that your love came with a limit, a silent one, the kind that isn't shouted in anger, but drawn in the sand once, and once it's crossed, it's final. She thought you'd wait forever because she overestimated her importance and underestimated your self-respect. But every day you stayed silent, every day you worked on yourself instead of chasing her shadow, you were moving further away from the man who would have waited. You didn't pause, you evolved. That's the heartbreak she wasn't ready for. Not yours, hers. The quiet realization that she is no longer in the chapter she assumed she could return to. The man she left is gone, and in his place is someone stronger, colder, more selective. Someone who doesn't see her as a savior, but as a lesson. And no one wants to be remembered as a lesson. That's the ego's worst nightmare. Being the reason a man became great, without being part of his greatness. She thought she could come back whenever, that she had time, but time didn't wait. You didn't wait, and now she's left with the weight of her own choices, because the door she walked out of doesn't swing in the same direction anymore. Number 3, detachment is your power. She didn't realize that emotional detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the moment a man stops reacting and starts observing. You didn't detach to hurt her. You detached to save yourself, to regain control over a mind that was spinning in circles, begging for closure, drowning in what-ifs. Detachment isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about refusing to bleed for someone who wouldn't even notice the wound. It's about stepping outside the storm and realizing that the chaos was never yours to carry. She used to be the gravity pulling on your emotions. One look, one message, and you'd spiral. But something changed. You started choosing your peace over her presence. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped checking if she was watching, because true detachment isn't about punishing someone. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of their approval. And once you stopped depending on her validation, you started becoming immune to her silence. What she feels now isn't just distance, it's disconnection. That invisible thread she thought would always bind you is gone, and she can feel it, not because you told her, but because energy doesn't lie. You're no longer holding space for her in your thoughts, and that absence, that clean, stoic absence, it burns more than any argument ever could. Because detachment whispers the one truth no ego wants to hear. You are no longer significant to my peace. Now she's chasing a version of you she can't reach anymore. Because when a man detaches, when he reclaims his emotional center, when he becomes the observer of his pain instead of its prisoner, he becomes untouchable. And that's what she never prepared for, not a cold shoulder, but a man who simply no longer flinches. Number 4, healing is a private victory. Healing isn't loud, it's not a post, it's not a story update, it's not proving you've moved on with a fake smile and a rebound on your arm. Healing is quiet. It happens behind closed doors, when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when the phone doesn't buzz and your chest still feels hollow. It's the discipline of waking up, even when you'd rather disappear. It's eating, training, creating, and building. Not to be seen, but because you refuse to stay broken. She thought she'd be the one you needed to heal, that without her you'd just unravel. But healing in silence, without her, despite her, was the curveball, because it meant she didn't get to be part of the redemption arc. She didn't get to witness your glow-up, your rise, your return to power. And that's what stings the most. Not that you healed, but that you did it without her ever seeing it happen. No access, no closure, just distance. That's the victory of the Stoic man. Not revenge, not replacement, not noise, just growth, just peace. The kind of peace that can't be touched by her presence or absence. When you heal in silence, you don't give anyone a front-row seat to your rebirth. You move in the shadows. You level up in solitude. You sharpen your mind, your body, your path. And one day, without warning, you return as someone they can't even recognize, let alone reach. You see, healing isn't about proving her wrong. It's about proving to yourself that she was never the source of your strength. And once you realize that, there's no need to announce it. You just live it, quietly, powerfully, unshakably. Number 5, the watcher in the shadows. She hasn't said a word. No texts, no calls, nothing. But that doesn't mean she's not watching. Silence is deceptive. Just because she hasn't reached out doesn't mean she's not paying attention. In fact, that's when they watch the closest. When you've gone so quiet, so still, that they start wondering if you've truly let go. She checks your stories from a burner. She scrolls through your photos. She notices the shift in your energy, the light in your eyes, the way you carry yourself like a man who no longer needs closure to move forward. And that unsettles her, because when someone walks away, they want to be remembered, but not replaced. They want to believe they still haunt the corners of your mind, that you still replay the good times. That part of you is still anchored to their memory, but what happens when that anchor is cut? What happens when you stop grieving and start evolving? That's when curiosity creeps in, quietly, reluctantly. She won't admit it, but she's watching. Every glow-up, every move, every new connection. She wants to see if you're suffering. She wants to see if she still matters. But all she sees is a man who doesn't look back. And that's the real torment. Not that you've moved on, but that you've done it without needing to show her. You're not posting to provoke her. You're not flaunting your healing. You're simply living. And that authenticity, that detachment, it makes her presence feel irrelevant. And nothing crushes the ego more than feeling invisible to someone who once worshipped you. You became the mirror she can't stand to look into, because watching you rise in silence reminds her of what she lost. And worse, what she'll never have access to again. Number 6, rejection was redirection. At first it felt like destruction, like the floor had been ripped from beneath you. Her absence echoed in every quiet room. Every night you stared at the ceiling, asking yourself what went wrong. But now, with distance and clarity, you see it for what it really was. Not destruction, but redirection. Life removed her not to punish you, but to prepare you, to strip away your illusions, to break your dependence on someone who could never meet you where you were going. You thought you needed her love. You didn't. You needed the pain she left behind to awaken your discipline. You needed the betrayal to expose the cracks in your identity. You needed her rejection to become the mirror that showed you who you really are when no one's applauding, when no one's holding your hand. That kind of loneliness, that raw silence, it either crushes you or builds you, and you chose to let it forge you. She was the spark, but you were always the fire. You just forgot. And sometimes the only way to remember is to be left in the dark with nothing but yourself. That's when the Stoic man is born, not in love, but in loss, not in comfort, but in the chaos that comes when you're forced to rebuild your soul from scratch. Now you look back and realize, she wasn't the destination. She was the detour that made you stronger for the real path. Her absence created the space you needed to become the version of you that she could never have handled. And that's not bitterness, that's truth. Sometimes what breaks you is the very thing that frees you. Number 7. She fell for the man you were. Now you're evolving. She fell for the version of you that was still soft, still seeking, still unsure, the man who gave too much, too fast, the one who placed her on a pedestal and dimmed his own light just to keep her comfortable. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she thinks still exists. But what she doesn't realize is that heartbreak is the great sculptor. It chisels away the weakness, the self-doubt, the illusion, and what's left is something far more dangerous. A man in motion, a man evolving. You're no longer the version of yourself that would beg for breadcrumbs. You've stopped auditioning for love that couldn't see your worth. Every day you've spent in silence has refined you. Your body stronger, your mind sharper, your soul quieter, but heavier. You carry yourself differently now, less reactive, more deliberate. And that shift, she feels it, even if she can't name it, because energy doesn't lie. And the man you are becoming doesn't look back. He doesn't seek validation. He chooses who has access to him. And here's the brutal truth. She can't reach this new you. Not because you blocked her, not because you hate her, but because she's no longer aligned with the frequency you've risen to. She fell for a man who needed her. But this version of you, this man needs no one. That's what makes you magnetic now. Your independence, your self-respect, your stillness. She doesn't want the evolved you because she doesn't know how to handle a man who sees through the game, a man who doesn't chase, doesn't prove, doesn't fold. And the tragedy is this: she fell for the caterpillar, but now you've become the storm-proof butterfly, unreachable, unapologetic, uninterested. Number 8. When you pull back, she feels the void. You didn't slam the door. You didn't curse her name or light her memory on fire. You simply pulled back. And that silence, that absence, it's not emptiness, it's weight. A weight she didn't expect to feel, because she was used to your presence, your energy filling the room, your attention orbiting her moods, your consistency acting as a safety net. When you were there, even in pain, she felt powerful. But when you withdrew, when your energy disappeared, that's when the void opened. Most people don't feel your presence until it's gone, and you were the presence she didn't understand until she was left with the cold echo of your absence. It's not that she misses the relationship, it's that she misses being desired, being chased, being seen. And now that you've gone dark, now that your attention is no longer on her, she's stuck wondering if she ever mattered, or if she just lost something she never fully appreciated. The truth is, your silence holds a gravity of its own. It's not passive, it's active. It's what happens when a man no longer places his worth in someone else's hands. When he realizes that giving space isn't just an act of retreat, it's a reclaiming of power. And when a man like that pulls back, the space he leaves behind doesn't feel like peace. It feels like punishment. Because now she's alone with her choices, alone with the reality that you're no longer emotionally available, no longer watching, no longer waiting. And in that stillness, in that absence, she doesn't feel free. She feels forgotten. That's the power of pulling back. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It simply leaves a silence that says, I have nothing left to give you. Number 9. Your indifference is her mirror. She used to measure her worth by your reaction. Every emotional outburst, every desperate message, every moment of weakness. These were signs that she still had a grip on you. But now, nothing. No anger, no sorrow, just calm indifference. And that indifference cuts deeper than heartbreak ever could, because it doesn't mean you hate her. It means she no longer has any emotional currency in your world. That's a truth most people can't handle, that they've become irrelevant to someone who once adored them. Your indifference is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's a signal that you've stopped seeking closure from the same place that gave you confusion. You've stepped outside the emotional loop she expected you to stay trapped in. She thought she could always trigger a response, that she could resurface in your mind with a memory, a photo, or a glimpse of nostalgia. But nothing comes back. No response, no curiosity, no crack in the armor. That silence, that stillness, that's her mirror. And in that mirror, she sees the reflection of someone who underestimated you. Someone who thought you'd stay available, emotionally open, forever longing. But what she sees now is the exact opposite. A man who healed, detached, and moved on without needing to prove it. That's terrifying, because it means she was never as important to your identity as she believed. Indifference is the final stage of letting go. It's when you stop loving, stop hating, and just exist beyond them. It's when her name no longer stirs anything in you, not anger, not sadness, not longing, just peace. And that peace is the most deafening silence she'll ever hear. Because your indifference doesn't say, "I'm over you." It says, "You no longer exist in the world I'm building." Number 10. You became the man she'll never have again. She thought you were a phase, a chapter she could close, revisit, and rewrite if she ever changed her mind. She never thought the door would lock behind her, never imagined the man who once would have moved mountains for her would become the mountain she can no longer climb. That's the cruel irony. She let go thinking she could always return. But the man you are now, she doesn't even recognize him. And that's not because you changed to spite her. You changed to survive her. She lost access, not to the boy who begged, but to the man who built himself in silence. You didn't just move on, you leveled up. You outgrew the version of you that tolerated uncertainty, that chased validation, that sought love from hands that couldn't hold you. And now, you're not even on the same frequency. The distance between who you were and who you are now is a chasm she can't cross. She might still think about reaching out. She might type the message and delete it. But deep down, she knows whatever grip she had is gone. Whatever window existed is closed. You didn't just walk away. You evolved into someone so rooted, so self-possessed, that the version of her that left you no longer qualifies for the man you've become. That's what haunts her now. Not just that she lost you, but that she'll never again stand beside the man you became because of her absence. That man is no longer waiting, no longer seeking, no longer even watching. He's too busy building an empire she'll only ever see from a distance. She didn't just lose love. She lost legacy. She didn't expect you to heal, not truly, not without noise, not without chasing, not without breaking first. But you did, in silence, in stillness, in solitude. And that's what echoes now. Not the sound of her leaving, but the silence you left behind when you stopped needing her to return. You didn't win by replacing her. You didn't win by seeking revenge. You won by becoming a man who no longer clings to people who had to let you go to see your value. You became the storm she can't predict, the calm she can't penetrate, the power she can't reclaim. She didn't expect you to become this strong, this composed, this unreachable, but now she sees it. And the scariest part, she knows she had her chance, and it's gone. Let this be your reminder. Your growth doesn't need an audience. Your evolution doesn't require permission. You don't have to make noise to be felt. When you walk in silence with discipline, clarity, and purpose, the right people will feel your absence louder than your presence ever was. If this spoke to you, if you're walking that silent path of healing right now, comment below, "I didn't lose her. I found me." This is Stoic Blessing. Until next time, hold the line, protect your peace, and remember, your silence is not emptiness. It's sacred.